So I haven't been recording as many videos or even writing as many posts as I wanted to. And I think I just had a bunch of transitions in terms of job change, switching between having multiple contracts, where I get very in the weeds and very focused. So try to minimize outside distractions so I can really nail down requirements, which is what I've been doing. Got to a good point. We're getting through design and getting into the build mode, and wanted to get things moving again in terms of content and sharing ideas and all that good stuff. So I've struggled with writing, and I was hoping with agentic and prompting and things like that I could get a closer to done version, but the more I look at it, the more I always tweak and rephrase and stuff. So what I'm going to try to do is video more often, capture the text from that, generate it from that because it's how I ended up saying it, and I think I'm better with that as my voice, and then publish more content this way because I think it'll be easier. The other thing I want to do is share more of what I'm tinkering with that's more hands-on. So this project I came up with is like pretty simple overall based on some other things I'm working on, but it's also just something I wanted, so I feel like I know other people want it too. I'm calling it the PMBS tester, which is Product Manager Bullshit Tester. It's pretty basic in terms of functionality. I essentially want to create a Notebook LM, not a clone, but interface, right, where people can log in and they can upload their documents, and then they can kind of chat with the documents that are in there. But the entire purpose of this is to give PMs like a pretty critical, analytical, like detail-oriented analysis or gut check for what their assumptions are making, or kind of insights they're identifying, or actions that they're taking on this. So the concept came to me, figured it's something that people would use for fun. I think it's relatively easy to build out, and it can follow some of the steps that I usually go for tinkering with something like this, and we can cover some different tools in the video series too. So that's the premise of the project. This is new content that I'm trying out, so I'm open to feedback on this. I'm also trying a new recorder called Supercut instead of Loom, and it does some things nicely. So it does a lot of the things that Loom does. It does some other things nicely in terms of video formatting. And I haven't had a chance to use it as much as I want to. I mostly have been using it for testing, verifying, sharing clips, and things like that. So I'm giving that a new try. We'll see how the videos turn out in the end of it. But I wanted to share what I ultimately ended up doing is starting a fresh chat with, I guess I tried out O3 Mini High at this point. All the reasoning models that are coming out, I think, are comparable. I can't, honestly, I've been using all of them, and I can't say O1 or O3 or O3 Mini High or even R1 do one thing better than the other, like in a very obvious way, depending on what you give them and what you ask for. But they're all very capable, right? So I think in this case, I was trying O3 Mini High because it's not very complex. I basically did a brain dump of, okay, here's the idea that I had. The goal is to basically help product managers get a simple and safe way to gut check whatever they're putting together before they share it out with the rest of the company or their team. I'm planning on using just a simple agentic workflow with Crew AI and a basic UI that we generate, either Streamlit or Replit, like nothing too complex. And then I gave it, here's what I want the agents to do. So this is more of systems thinking, right? This is the experience that I want to happen. So if the session is initiated and the user doesn't immediately give them a request, I want it to greet them and basically ask them for context on what they want to test. It should inform them that the system is basically going to ask no more than 3 questions to clarify. So it's on the PM to provide clarity and context. That's our jobs, right? So I think that's something we can do, and it puts some pressure on the user to take it seriously instead of just spamming it. So I think it makes it a little bit more fun or exciting or stressful in some cases if there's a limit to how much clarity it can get out of it, right? It's going to give you a chance, but part of this is the tone and the branding and the experience for Bullshit Tester is also, I want the interactions to feel like have a little bit of attitude or sauce on them. So it's not going to be super nice and greeting them all the time and like apologizing for things like I want the agents to interact, or I want the LLM to interact with a bit of SaaS, not software as a service, but attitude, to kind of make it fun and take the PM's like stress levels down a little bit to just get used to that. So once they submit it, I have this curiosity agent to analyze the response, determine what questions are worth asking, essentially, and give them an explanation of why they're asking the question so the PM understands how to answer it or what it's looking for. The composer will rewrite the original submission that the user gave with the new information added. If I use like file uploads and things in the UI, depending on what I put together, this will factor in summaries from the context given or identify key points from those docs, and I'll update that prompt. And then I said we'll give it to a skeptical agent who's basically going to go through and identify a list of criticisms, any major assumptions that were put in there, unsupported claims, insights that were gleaned from maybe research or conversations that don't align with other research or information that's out there, and basically take the idea of first principles thinking to their content and their thought process, and then see if we can break it down. So this agent's basically going to be like, okay, which parts of your thought process don't make sense, or which parts of your thought process are based on, maybe some assumptions or bias or things like that, and it's going to come up with that list. Then we'll give it to a researcher who's going to go actually validate that what we think might be bullshit is actually bullshit, or see if there's anything that supports it. That way we're not giving the PM feedback or flagging things that aren't really valid, or that don't have any supporting information, as well as say. There's going to be lots of cases where it flags something and the context wasn't there, and the PM's like, well, yeah, but I've already thought of that and I handled that by some other thing that wasn't provided, right? So PMs have to be smart enough to know that. But the goal of the research piece is just to make sure that there's some weight behind what we're saying, and I don't create an agent that's just arguing with them to argue with them. And obviously the PM's going to have to use their own judgment in terms of saying like, okay, this is a pretty far stretch, which means I'm in good shape overall, but I'm going to try to build some other things into this that make it clear of like on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 out of 100, how much BS was detected, kind of thing. So this is the initial prompt. I just basically brain dumped on the reasoning model, and it's pretty good about handling that from there. You see a little bit of thinking like, okay, here's how it's going to work. And this is me saving my notes for the project of just basically, here's the idea I had, right? Like here's the idea I had and what I want to do. Here's my concept or thoughts on how I would put it together. And the nice thing about this is it just puts it in more of an actionable plan. So once I saw that and I felt like it had a pretty good grasp on it, I asked it to draft the Crew AI project and include the commands to run it, so that next time I'm on my dev computer, I can start setting the basics of this up and play around with it. And then I think the other thing, I asked it to draft the rough files, and it did. It gave me a file per agent, which is what I wanted. And the reason I'm using Crew AI over LangGraph or some of the other ones is because after having researched a bunch of them for a while, Crew AI has a structure that made the most sense to me. It uses Python, but really it's text. If you look at any of these .py files, like it's not hardcore code, and you can also, Python's general enough where you can ask some of these models to help you with the code if you need to do anything. And then I use Cursor to kind of like put it all together and make sure it works and troubleshoot. So, but you're really just like defining variables, agents, tasks, workflows, crews. So there's no real like crazy advanced syntax. There's no like very complex multiple file directories. There's no like dependencies or things like that I have to worry about as a non-developer. It's pretty straightforward. So that's why I started with that, and it's not a very complex like agentic workflow, or I don't have to worry about like complex tool management. So hopefully it'll work when we pull this all together. So it gave me the files. All these are different files. Sorry if I'm scrolling too fast. And then I want to say I even went as far as to ask it to help me write a prompt for Replit so I could start spinning out the UI, which is something I played around with this morning. And so I don't think I even gave this entire prompt to Replit with the code examples in here. I'd have to open up Replit and find out. I basically grabbed some screenshots from Notebook LM along with a screenshot from leadingproduct.link and for styling, and wrote up a little prompt for it. I don't know if I gave it all this. I think I gave it some requirements, but I don't think I actually used all this. I'll have to look and see. But in terms of starting out, this was the first chat I did, and I just did it with a GPT general chat. Then what I did is I created a project. So if you're not familiar with projects give you they give you a system prompt or instructions for your interactions in here. They give you consolidated memory for all the threads that are in here, and they give you kind of like your own file repository. I'm not sure what else. Yeah, they have different capabilities for it. I think they do limit projects right now to 4.0. Oh, and it looks like 0.1's in here now too. But the nice thing about doing this is every time I'm working on this project and I come back to this chat, it keeps it here and that context is saved. So I can go back and see how it's changed over time. I can find my other conversations. I don't have to go through all the different other ways that I'm using GPT to find it. So I like consolidating in projects because it also gains the intelligence from the conversation I have with it. So if I put a little bit more time into my input and back and forth, it has that feedback to reference again later on. So I moved that chat into the project, and if you're not sure how to do that, if you click on options for one of your chats, you can add any of these into a project. So if I'm going to do that, I can add it to that one. And so I don't have any files in here yet because I just started poking around with this. I don't have docs or anything else on a reference, but that's kind of how I set up the initial project for this. Next steps are working on the front end app in Replit, working on the kind of agentic pieces and crew, and then trying to put it all together, which I haven't done with the Replit app first. One of the things I'm working on, I use Streamlit, which is super easy. But yeah, I'm going to record and capture this process as we put this together. Again, I'm not a developer or coder. Historically, I'm product, project, marketing, design, everything except for that. So I'm learning a lot as we go, but I think this process can help other people create more, which I think is the direction we're heading anyway. So hopefully you enjoy.